What is one of the biggest contributors in Resident Evil's idea of horror? Don't answer that because I have the answer right here. And it is its locations. Spencer Mansion or the RPD or the Village are nothing short of iconic. Not only are they very aesthetically pleasing, they also do contribute to your fear with the sense of isolation. And as probably every game studio in the world, throughout the years Capcom has also been expanding its games. That is also true for Resident Evil's general map and level design, as each game was getting bigger and bigger. So the question is, could Resident Evil finally take the final step and make Resident Evil 9 an open world game? By now there have been many rumors about Resident Evil 9, including the possibility of an open world game. And while I do believe most of the rumors and supposed leaks are false, as per usual, the idea of an open world game really intrigued me, because when you take a look at the latest games in the franchise, Capcom sort of have been moving to that direction very slowly. Especially with Resident Evil Village, where we have this, and it might seem crazy, village, where basically we have this like sort of main hub with the Duke always waiting for us there and the typewriter. It's very basic, but it works. And while the game itself is still very linear, we can definitely see some open world aspects to it, namely with the hidden treasures and exploration. And in my opinion, it's done really well. I love Resident Evil Village. I don't care what your opinion about it is, because I know that it's not a very popular title in the franchise, but I do believe if you don't like Resident Evil Village that you are just genuinely stupid. If we look at Resident Evil 4 Remake, the game is a lot more linear than Village, but it definitely expanded on the idea of side quests, as there are many of them, albeit very small and easily doable, but there is a considerable amount. Each big area, namely the castle, also becomes very backtrackable, as once you finish it and get some of the key items, there is the opportunity for you to go back and unlock all the treasures. Like for example in the castle, when you get the cube, you do have the opportunity to sort of run around and unlock everything that you couldn't before. I think the good example of this would be also chapter 4 in the game after the Del Lago fight, where sort of the entire village area of the game becomes accessible with a boat. You can run around and have fun. Hell, the shooting range could even be considered like a fun side activity. Resident Evil 3 had a good opportunity to have some open world aspects to it, but it didn't. The game is ass. Since Resident Evil 9 seems to be in development for a pretty long time by now, they are definitely putting a lot of care into it. I am going to get to the problems of an open world Resident Evil game later, and by later I mean right now. I assume you know what an open world game means, but to at least have some basic definition. In an open world game you can approach objectives freely, that being the main story missions or side missions. Usually there are no boundaries, walls and locked doors or invisible walls in the open areas of an open world game, and the playing area is only limited by like geographical features like mountains or oceans. If we take for example GTA San Andreas, you can sort of access the entire map right from the get-go, although you can only really do stuff in Los Santos, and other side content gets open once you progress the game. There is always the option to go places before. Now when you think of a good open world game, you think of GTA 5, Red Dead Redemption, Yakuza, Cyberpunk. And what do all these open worlds have in common? Well, they're very rich. And by that I mean the world feels alive, like there are actual people living in it. And I think that's like the first indication why that might not be a good idea. You cannot really have a good open world without a world where you don't feel like things are actually going on there. And you cannot really have a good Resident Evil horror game without a world where you actually feel alone. There is a rumor that Resident Evil 9 would take place on an island facility. So let's say that's true, and let's say this island is pretty massive. Just the sheer area of this island would not make this a good open world. In fact, if anything, it would make it more boring and tedious to move around if nothing was actually going on in there. And if you do have an open world with people living in it with side content like for example baseball, then where's the horror? And you could bring up the examples of games like Far Cry 3 or Borderlands, where outside of like enemy encounters, there's not much going on. You still have like a main base or something to go back to get side quests from characters. Most importantly, those are not horror games. The closest to a survival horror game with open world with a spirit similar to Resident Evil that I can think of is Silent Hill Downpour, and that game effectively killed the franchise for a while. And I do not think it's because of the story, because the story is not actually even bad. Although it does fail to capture the essence of Silent Hill, so it should not be called Silent Hill. You know, it's not bad. I think what did kill the franchise was gameplay. And while having an open world is definitely not the only misstep Silent Hill Downpour made when it comes to gameplay, it definitely also didn't help its case. The protagonist of Resident Evil 9 is also an important part of this whole open world problem. Because let's say you're going to play as one of the OG characters, one of the legacy characters like Leon, Jill, Chris, you get a point, which the rumors do suggest you would play as Jill and Leon. It could make for an interesting dynamics if Leon and Jill interacted with the inhabitants of this island, beyond just a merchant type character. Because having just one character, the merchant, is sort of a friendly type NPC that gives you quests, I think for a fully fledged open world game is too little. Even if there are like treasures hidden around, you'd simply need something more to make this world feel worth exploring. The next problem that sort of shows itself when it comes to an open world Resident Evil game is the pacing of the story and the scares. In especially the classic Resident Evil, the map layout is very carefully crafted when it comes to how it ties to story progression. Let's take for example Resident Evil 2 Remake, specifically the library, where you have the little bookshelf puzzles that you can't really solve until much later to the RPD section of the game. In fact, it's one of the latest puzzles in the RPD, but you discover it rather quickly, and it's, you sort of have to leave it there, and it's still in the back of your mind all the time. And because while you can run around the RPD, this quote-unquote freedom is only used to evade enemies, while the game, the story, and how you play it still remains linear. This puzzle remains in the back of your mind, and you run around solving other things. You know that puzzle is important for escaping, so it adds to the feeling of being trapped. In an open world game, I don't think you can have a puzzle like that, at least not for a main story mission. Not to mention again the feeling of being trapped. If you have the freedom of running away, it does not feel like you're being trapped. I guess the idea of having more characters and the dynamics between them, and even the fear of being trapped, be solved if we play as a brand new character. As if the rumors of the facility on the island are true, having a brand new character being a prisoner or a worker on the island could work in the game's favor. Even the sense of being trapped would work in this case. This character's main objective would be to escape the island. And as opposed to the veteran characters like Leon and Jill, everything would be new to this new character. But I do not think that Capcom is going for a new character. I mean, not after Ethan. I think it is in their best interest to bring back old characters to sort of continue their story in the games, as opposed just continuing them in the movies that sort of always have to end in a status quo. Maybe a semi-open world would work in a way that the game is not trying to be something that it's not. Let's say instead of a full open world, the map is sort of divided into large areas. Sort of like in Village, just a bit bigger and more interconnected. More stuff going on around the map. Not just the merchant, but a few other characters. Like for example in Village you encounter the group of survivors that they die right away. So let's say in 9 you sort of encounter a few characters scattered around the world that you can help out throughout the game. And if the game does have you play as a legacy character, that would just put more emphasis on how heroic they are. And the interaction with new characters could even stretch out the personalities of the legacy characters. Like for example, in Damnation, Leon has this dynamic with Buddy and his friends. I don't think the legacy characters should just interact with each other for mindless fan service like it was in Death Island. Let's say with story progression, a new area of the map opens up, where you of course start encountering new enemies. You know, just to keep the spirit of Resident Evil, have a new enemy be introduced in a monumental way, like for example the Garradors were introduced in Resident Evil 4 with the first Garrador. To make the exploration of the open world more rewarding, have areas with a lot of ammo hidden somewhere. Then of course hidden guns like how it was in Village with the Magnum could just help the player in the main story. Side content, I honestly cannot really imagine side content for a Resident Evil game outside of like the shooting range and the little ball puzzles in Resident Evil Village. But I think what could be really interesting in this case is a stalker enemy. Because imagine just having this open world and you're, you know, running around, exploring, just minding your own business, having fun. Suddenly a giant ass motherfucker starts charging towards you. If a Mr. X or Nemesis or, you know, this type of enemy roams the island, or you know, whatever this map is, it doesn't have to be an island, it's just a rumor, that would make the game so intense. It's like in Yakuza 0, you're just running around Kamurocho and you have Mr. Shakedown come after you. That would be genuinely terrifying. Just put Mr. Shakedown in the game. In conclusion, I think the open world would definitely be less scary, just like the map and exploration mechanics would have to evolve. The horror area of the franchise would also have to evolve with it. There is even the question if Capcom could pull off an open world game like that. Each new game in Resident Evil franchise brought something new to it, sometimes successfully, sometimes less successfully. If they do that, the only thing I want is a stalker enemy. But who knows? Not me. Imagine you are in an open world game and you want to 100% complete it. Liking this video is a side quest that is required for this completion, and subscribing too. So let me know down in the comments what you would like to see in Resident Evil 9, and hopefully I will see you next time.